Because about the time when he came out with She's Gotta Have It, that was probably the longest period of time that basically black culture had really not been reflected in the Hollywood mainstream. I mean, I'm even surprised that blacks went to the movies at all. I can't believe that they, would go and not see themselves represented on the screen.
When Quentin Tarantino cuts ties with an actor, it's never quiet. It's explosive.
I'm not your slave and you're not my master.
At 62 years old, Tarantino has built a career on precision, loyalty, and complete control.
I'm here to sell my movie. Make no mistake.
But step out of line on his set, and you're not just replaced. You're erased. Over 3 decades, he's worked with legends, revived careers, and created some of the most unforgettable characters in cinema history. But behind the fame, 6 actors crossed him in ways he could never forgive.
It's none of your damn business what I think about that.
Some were Hollywood icons, others rising stars, but all of them learned the same brutal lesson. In Tarantino's world, loyalty is everything, and betrayal is permanent. So, who are the 6 actors Quentin Tarantino hated enough to banish from his universe? Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see his films forever.
I feel like filmmaking, directors are like boxers. It's all about knowing when to hang up the gloves.
And before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more untold stories from behind the camera. Quentin Tarantino's career began with an explosion literally and figuratively. His debut feature, Reservoir Dogs, is now hailed as a masterpiece of indie cinema. But behind the camera, chaos brewed, and it came from one man, Lawrence Tierney. Tierney was no ordinary hire. He was a relic of Hollywood's hard-boiled noir era, famous for playing tough guys with a permanent scowl. Casting him as crime boss, Joe Cabot seemed like a stroke of genius. But the moment filming began, it became a disaster Quentin could never forget. Tierney was volatile. He forgot his lines, clashed with crew members, and argued endlessly with Tarantino over even the smallest details. For Quentin, who demands absolute precision, this wasn't just frustrating, it was unbearable. The breaking point came during a heated confrontation where Tierney stormed off set. Quentin followed, voices escalated, and in a moment that stunned the crew, he fired Tierney on the spot. Years later, Tarantino compared working with him to dealing with your senile uncle who's off his meds. Michael Madsen admitted Tierney's presence poisoned the set, turning every day into a gamble. For a 29-year-old directing his very first film, Quentin made an astonishingly cold choice. Cut the man he'd written the role for, both professionally and emotionally. When Reservoir Dogs became a cult classic, Quentin rarely mentioned Tierney again. No anecdotes, no tributes, not even a nostalgic nod. It was as if Tierney had been cut from Tarantino's memory just as sharply as he'd been cut from the set. And if Tarantino could erase a veteran he once idolized, just imagine what happened when he clashed with one of Hollywood's biggest stars at the height of his fame. When Pulp Fiction exploded in 1994, it didn't just shake up Hollywood, it rewrote the rules of cinema. The film revived careers, minted stars, and proved Quentin Tarantino was more than just a one-hit wonder. For Bruce Willis, who played the weary boxer Butch Coolidge, it should have been a dream comeback. Instead, it became his one and only dance in Tarantino's universe. At that point, Willis needed a win. His career had stumbled through box office disappointments like Hudson Hawk, Striking Distance, and Color of Night. Tarantino handed him a gift, a gritty, layered role that gave him an edge audiences hadn't seen in years. On screen, it clicked. But behind the scenes, something was off. Quentin treats his scripts like scripture. Every word is intentional, every pause carefully placed. Bruce, on the other hand, was known for improvisation, sarcasm, and a swagger that dominated the room. That style clashed with Tarantino's obsessive precision. According to whispers from the set, Quentin saw Willis as unreliable, too self-aware, too Bruce to disappear into the role. And unlike John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, who became lifelong Tarantino collaborators, Willis never came back. What's most telling isn't the dramatic fallout, but the silence. In interviews, Quentin praises the Pulp Fiction ensemble, yet often skips Willis' name, as though it doesn't quite fit the narrative of his cinematic family. For Tarantino, omission is its own punishment. Willis, for his part, kept things diplomatic. He never attacked Tarantino publicly, but he also never credited him for reviving his career, something most actors would boast about forever. Two stubborn men, both proud, walked away with no bridge between them. But if Bruce Willis was quietly erased, the next star Tarantino clashed with was dismissed with a cutting line heard around the industry, one that struck right at the heart of his Hollywood image. By the mid-90s, George Clooney was Hollywood's rising golden boy. He had just left his TV roots behind and was ready to prove he belonged on the big screen. His breakthrough came with From Dusk Till Dawn, a cult vampire crime hybrid written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by Robert Rodriguez. Clooney's performance as Seth Gecko made him a movie star overnight. Most actors in this position would have been pulled deeper into Tarantino's orbit. Instead, Clooney never returned. And the reason is brutally simple. Quentin didn't believe in him. Years later, Quentin dropped a bomb in an interview. George Clooney is not a movie star. No wink, no punchline, just flat dismissal. He doubled down, challenging people to name any truly great Clooney films after the year 2000. This wasn't some offhand comment. It was a public rejection of Clooney's entire Hollywood identity. Clooney didn't stay quiet. He fired back, defending his career with receipts. Ocean's 11, Michael Clayton, Syriana. Not just hits, but prestige films that earned him awards and respect across the industry. But Tarantino wasn't interested in charm or polish. To him, Clooney was too safe, too refined, too much of a red carpet persona. Quentin's cinematic world thrives on danger, unpredictability, and rawness. Clooney, in his eyes, was everything Hollywood packaged and polished, not what Tarantino wanted. What followed was silence. Clooney never got a call for a cameo, never even circled another Tarantino project. For a director famous for recycling his cast like family, that absence is deafening. And unlike other feuds, there was no shouting match, no backstage explosion. Just a cold cut, as if Quentin edited Clooney out of his reel of Hollywood history. But if Clooney's dismissal was cold and professional, the next clash was loud, personal, and very public, pitting Quentin against another legendary director in a war of words that burned bridges forever. Some Hollywood feuds fade quietly. Quentin Tarantino's war with Spike Lee? It was anything but quiet. It was loud, raw, and played out for the world to see. It started in 1997, when Jackie Brown hit theaters. Spike Lee blasted Tarantino's use of the N-word, calling it obsessive, and even asking, what does he want to be made an honorary black man? This wasn't a casual critique. It was a direct attack on Tarantino's storytelling, his artistic identity, even his right to use certain language. Quentin didn't apologize. He snapped back with venom. Spike needs to shut the F up. Just like that, a professional debate turned into a public war. Headlines exploded. Two of the most recognizable directors of their generation were trading insults, and neither showed signs of backing down. The feud reignited years later with Django Unchained. Spike Lee condemned the movie without even watching it, calling it disrespectful to my ancestors. Quentin didn't flinch. Instead, he twisted the knife, claiming Lee was bitter. I think the problem is I'm making the black movies he wishes he could make. That line sealed it. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was open hostility. And unlike other Tarantino fallouts, which fade into silence, this one remained a burning fire. No collaborations, no reconciliations, not even polite nods on shared stages. Both men went their separate ways, refusing to share space, refusing even to acknowledge each other's successes. In Hollywood, grudges often mellow with time, but this one became permanent, a scar in both men's legacies. For Tarantino, it wasn't just about defending his dialogue. It was about defending his right to tell stories his way, no matter who objected. And while Spike Lee challenged Quentin in public, the next fallout came from inside his own circle, an actor who helped launch his career, but mysteriously vanished after just one unforgettable role. In Reservoir Dogs, Steve Buscemi stole the show as Mr. Pink, delivering one of the most memorable rants in indie film history, the infamous refusal to tip waitresses. The performance cemented Buscemi as a breakout star of the Tarantino era. Fans expected to see him again and again in Quentin's cinematic universe. But strangely, after that film, he never returned. No cameo, no supporting role, nothing. So what happened? Rumors suggest it all goes back to that very scene. Some crew members have whispered that the tipping rant wasn't entirely fiction, that Buscemi himself had voiced similar views off camera. Tarantino, who builds characters with razor-sharp intention, didn't take kindly to actors blurring the line between his writing and their real-life opinions. According to one recollection, Quentin even joked years later that if Buscemi ever wanted back in, he'd have to play a waiter. The joke stung because it carried truth. Buscemi was quietly locked out. Meanwhile, other Reservoir Dogs cast members became long-term collaborators. Michael Madsen and Tim Roth appeared in multiple Tarantino films. Even Harvey Keitel continued to circle Quentin's projects. But Buscemi? He simply disappeared from the roster, as if his name had been erased from the casting board. Buscemi himself has never spoken bitterly. In a brief interview, he only said, "I haven't heard from Quentin in a long time, but I wish him well." Polite words, but distant. For fans, the absence was glaring. And that's what makes Buscemi's exile so unusual. There was no public feud, no dramatic fallout, just silence. In Tarantino's world, that silence is its own judgment. But if Buscemi's dismissal was quiet, the next one was thunderous because it involved a Hollywood legend Tarantino originally wanted as the face of an entire saga. When Quentin Tarantino began writing Kill Bill, he envisioned an epic revenge saga that would stretch across 2 films and define a generation. At the heart of it was Bill, the enigmatic, poetic, menacing leader of the deadly Viper assassination squad. And in Tarantino's mind, there was only one man for the role, Warren Beatty. Beatty was Hollywood royalty. Charismatic, intelligent, with a reputation as both actor and director, he had the gravitas Tarantino wanted. The part was tailored around his persona, designed to reintroduce him to a younger audience. On paper, it should have been legendary, but the collaboration ended before a single frame was shot. The reason? Creative control. Beatty wasn't just an actor, he was used to running the show. He brought suggestions, edits, tonal shifts. To most directors, this might have been a negotiation. But for Quentin, it was a line in the sand. Every word, every frame, every cut belonged to him. But Beatty wasn't just offering input, he was threatening Tarantino's authorship. According to David Carradine, who ultimately replaced him, Beatty was trying to direct the director. And that, with Quentin, is fatal. The partnership collapsed and Beatty was quietly pushed aside. When asked later about the casting change, Tarantino gave a chillingly simple explanation. It wasn't going to work. I needed someone who understood it wasn't their story. That one line said it all. Beatty wanted a voice. Quentin wanted obedience. Carradine stepped in and delivered a haunting performance that became iconic. Beatty? He vanished from Tarantino's orbit, never mentioned again. In Hollywood, burned bridges sometimes get rebuilt. But in Tarantino's world, when the bridge collapses, it disappears forever. And that's the pattern, because while Beatty was erased quietly, Tarantino's loyalty to others only grew louder. Which brings us to the other side of the coin, the inner circle who never left his world. To understand Quentin Tarantino's grudges, you first have to understand his loyalty. Few directors in Hollywood are as fiercely devoted to their chosen actors. Once you earn his trust, you're not just cast, you're family. Look at Samuel L. Jackson. From Pulp Fiction to Jackie Brown to The Hateful Eight, he's been Tarantino's right-hand man for decades. Uma Thurman isn't just Kill Bill's bride, she's Quentin's muse, immortalized in one of cinema's greatest revenge epics. Christoph Waltz went from obscurity in Europe to back-to-back Oscars because Quentin gave him not one, but two career-defining roles. Even Michael Madsen and Tim Roth, part of his earliest ensemble, have returned time and again. This is the Tarantino inner circle actors who match his rhythm, respect his vision, and never question his authorship. And for those who fall in line, the rewards are massive. Iconic roles, career resurrections, even award-winning transformations. But the contrast is brutal. While Jackson and Thurman became legends inside Tarantino's cinematic family, actors like Bruce Willis and George Clooney were exiled after just one project. While Christoph Waltz soared to the Oscars, Steve Buscemi disappeared without a trace. This duality is at the heart of Tarantino's style. Absolute loyalty gets you legacy. Cross him, even slightly, and you're out. Not with fireworks, but with silence. And that silence has consequences. Because in Hollywood, where opportunities can define or destroy a career, being welcomed into Tarantino's world can mean immortality. Being cut out? That's when the ripple effects begin to show. Quentin Tarantino isn't just a filmmaker, he's a kingmaker. His movies don't just entertain audiences, they rewrite careers. To be chosen by Tarantino is to be stamped into cinematic history. To be cut out? That's a wound that never really heals. Think about John Travolta. Before Pulp Fiction, he was washed up, known more for forgotten sequels than fresh hits. One role in Quentin's world, and suddenly he was back on top dancing across screens and earning an Oscar nomination. Christoph Waltz was a respected but unknown German actor. After Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained, he wasn't just working, he was winning Academy Awards. Even Robert Forster, whose career had dwindled, found himself reborn with Jackie Brown. Tarantino doesn't just cast actors, he resurrects them. Now, compare that to the ones who fell. Bruce Willis never once credited Tarantino for helping repair his career, even though Pulp Fiction gave him relevance again. Steve Buscemi went on to great roles in Fargo and Boardwalk Empire, but fans still wonder how much bigger his filmography might have been with another Tarantino masterpiece under his belt. And Warren Beatty? He could have reinvented himself for a new generation as Bill in Kill Bill. But the role went to David Carradine instead, and that performance became immortal. Tarantino's silence is powerful. If he shuts the door on you, it's not just rejection, it's erasure. Hollywood notices. Fans notice. History notices. For some, working with Quentin is the spark that lights a legacy. For others, being cut from his world is like being written out of cinematic history. And that brings us to the heart of it all, a conclusion. Because Tarantino's world isn't just about talent. It's about something far more unforgiving. Loyalty, trust, and total submission to his vision. In Quentin Tarantino's universe, it doesn't matter how famous you are, how many awards you've won, or how iconic your face might be on a poster. What matters is loyalty, precision, total respect for his vision. Break that trust even once and you're gone. Lawrence Tierney's chaos, Bruce Willis' improvisation, George Clooney's polished charm, Spike Lee's public firestorm, Steve Buscemi's quiet dismissal, and Warren Beatty's battle for control. All six became lessons in what happens when you fall out of sync with Quentin. They weren't just replaced. They were erased. No rewrites, no reunions, just silence. Meanwhile, his chosen circle Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Christoph Waltz were elevated into cinematic immortality. That contrast tells the real story. In Tarantino's world, loyalty is rewarded with legacy, but betrayal, or even a hint of it, is punished with permanent exile. At 62 years old, Quentin's reputation is etched in stone. He's not just a director, he's a storyteller who writes his myths with the people he trusts and cuts out anyone who doesn't fit the rhythm. For some, that's ruthless. For others, it's the secret to his enduring genius. But here's the bigger question. Has Tarantino's stubborn loyalty made his film stronger, or has it cost him collaborations that could have changed his legacy forever? What do you think? Did Quentin Tarantino make the right calls, or did he burn bridges with actors who could have given us something unforgettable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love uncovering the hidden stories behind Hollywood's biggest legends, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and join us next time for more untold tales from behind the camera.